The world kept telling Bruce Lee no, but he discovered something powerful. Every no gave him another reason to become better.
To much of the world, Bruce Lee represents the peak of physical performance and martial arts dominance. The public consumed his life through the lens of Hollywood spectacle, framing him as a high-octane brawler and a permanent fixture of action cinema. But Lee viewed his own body as a mere instrument, a physical vehicle driven by a highly disciplined philosophical mind. By focusing on his physical speed, the world overlooked the deep architectural philosophy that generated his genius. In the months before his death, Lee was rapidly evolving his personal worldview beyond the limits of combat. His sudden passing in 1973 left a massive philosophical vacuum, leaving his followers to wonder where his ultimate teachings were headed. However, a distilled thesis survived the tragedy, a document known simply as Day 40. Lee wrote this as a forward-looking blueprint, explicitly intended for future generations to decode. The text of Day 40 stands as a tangible record of his final thoughts. The first pillar of the text demands the rejection of rigid dogma and the shattering of institutionalized rules. This reaches past martial arts, targeting all inherited cultural and societal belief systems that force the individual into a preset mold. Lee argues that adhering to rigid methodologies prevents you from discovering your own truth, keeping you trapped in someone else's pattern. The foundation of Day 40 is a process of radical unlearning, erasing societal expectations to reach a baseline of total mental independence. Once the mind is cleared of dogma, the text moves to its second pillar, continuous flow and radical mental adaptability. This is the concrete application of his famous water concept, where physical fluidity is perfectly translated into cognitive flexibility. This framework lets us process obstacles as neutral data points. Instead of meeting problems with resistance, the mind routes through an adaptation loop. By shifting to proactive adaptation, the mind absorbs the challenge, converting it into a forward-moving force. Lee contrasted this fluid psychological state with the mechanical, hesitating movements of those bound by rigid thinking. Day 40 provides a method for streamlining cognitive processing, allowing the mind to handle internal stress with the same economy of movement a master applies to a physical strike. Lee's goal was to provide a framework for self-actualization, not to create a legion of physical imitators. In the modern digital age, we are constantly pushed into rigid tribal identities and distracted by algorithms designed to keep our thinking predictable. The unlearning process of Day 40 acts as a filter for this noise, allowing a person to strip away these digital identities and maintain independent focus in a chaotic environment. Lee intuitively understood that as the world became more interconnected and complex, this level of mental immunity would become a necessity for survival. He left behind a practical instruction manual on how to maintain personal agency in an increasingly rigid world.